Hey guys, how is everybody doing? And with the release of Evil Dead Burn within just under a week releasing in theaters, I have decided to go through and review the entire Evil Dead film franchise, starting off with the original and the one that started it all, The Evil Dead. What the hell was that? And before I even do begin giving you my thoughts on this movie, it should be said, like my Christopher Nolan review series that I am doing right now, which I'm putting a pause on, so don't be confused by any means of me doing this. I'm still doing that. It's not like I quit doing it. Like my Christopher Nolan review series, this is going to be a re-review series. I have actually already done an Evil Dead review series, which oddly enough, was the same year that I did my Christopher Nolan review series back in 2023, which was 3 years ago, back when Evil Dead Rise was coming out. I did the entire movie review series of the four that we had at the time. I also did the three-season TV show of Ash vs. the Evil Dead. The only difference with these re-reviews is that I will not be re-reviewing Ash vs. the Evil Dead. I don't really have time and I don't really know what my thoughts would be on it because I haven't watched it since, and I don't really have time to watch, 10 episodes that are 50 minutes long within like a couple of days before a new movie comes out. I did it before because I had a lot of time, but now I'm older. I have a job and other stuff, so I don't have time anymore. And so that's the only difference with with these reviews. And the reason I'm going to be doing them is the same reason of my Christopher Nolan review series again, is that I feel like the quality is bad and that these movies deserve better because these are movies that mean a lot to me, and I want to do these movies justice. So with all the explanation and all the bullshittery finally out of the way, here are my thoughts on the original 1981 horror classic, The Evil Dead. But starting off with my positives, and my first positive of this movie is the sound design. The sound design has always been something that I've always loved about this movie, and it's always really subtle things, and it's not always just the Deadites and how they sound, or, just the noises they make. It's always been like the film itself, whether it's the trees moving around from the wind, or just, being the trees that they are in this movie in general, and like attacking people, or it's a simple car running, and there's moments like where Ash is like chaining up his girlfriend and the sounds of the chains clicking and him starting up the chainsaw and stuff like that. There's so many cool sound design in this movie, and and I'll get into this later with the camera work, and where there's like moments where it's just like moving between pillars and it's making this like whoosh like sound. The sound design in this movie has always been appealed to me, and this was like before I ever fell in love with sound design or big noises like I love today or whatever. So that has always been something that has appealed to me whenever I watch this movie or ever like, rewatch it. I don't know if the sound design is in the sequels. It's been a little bit since I've seen the movies, but and you think I would remember, but as you get older and become more busy and focus on other things, you kind of forget some things. But besides the point, the sound design in this first movie is really good. I don't know if it continues in the sequels because I simply can't remember, but I've always thought the sound design in this movie alone has always been one of its biggest achievements. And kind of going along with sound design, I've always felt like the camera work in this movie has always been amazing. I don't ever talk about camera work because, usually I kind of talk about cinematography half the time, which is camera work in all tech and, actuality. Actually, but I've always kind of more talked about cinematography over camera work, but God, I like choked a little bit. But the camera work in this movie has always been really good. Now, I don't know if it has to do with just the low budget because this movie was made for under $500,000, which is not a lot of money to make a movie. And I don't know if it had to do with just the low budget or if that's just how Sam Raimi wanted it because throughout the whole movie, it's kind of more close-up shots or whatever. And then when you kind of get towards the end of the movie, it becomes more of like these, in your face type moments or whatever, and just the way Sam Raimi uses the camera work throughout the whole movie of like, kind of creating suspense with the Deadites haunting around the cabin, and even the Deadites themselves, which everyone knows about the point of view shot, about the evil lurking in the woods or whatever. You never know what it actually looks like. You just see it lurking around or whatever. Just the camera work of that alone has always been iconic and has always been something that has been part of this franchise, and kind of replicated in a lot of other projects. But to me, the camera work has always been amazing in this movie, and I talked about it earlier when it kind of goes through the pillars or whatever. And just the camera work in this movie has always just been amazing to me. And what I also kind of liked about it is that Sam Raimi made every single shot of this movie seem like it mattered and that it was a focal point in the movie. Now, again, I don't, it might have to do with the low budget, because when you have a low budget, not a lot of money, you basically have to make every single shot matter, and that's how film works. But when I'm watching this movie, not only is the camera work just great, but he also just made every shot seem like it mattered, no matter what it was, no matter what was going on. It could have been the smallest thing going on, but he made sure that excuse me, he made sure that shot mattered. And I've always really liked that for some reason, because every time, like, it can be just simple shots of, like, just a shot of the woods or something. And to me, I'm like, that's a really cool shot. That's a really good looking shot right there. But overall, the camera work in this movie has always just been phenomenal to me, of whether it's just, the movements of the camera or the cinematography. And now let's kind of talk about what is like the main thing about this movie alone, which the other movies kind of become like more focused on Ash and stuff like that, but this movie is heavily focused on the Deadites, and the Deadites are one of the creepiest and coolest horror movie villains, characters, whatever in horror history to me. And it all starts with this movie. Now later in the other projects, they become more goofy and more, jokingly. It's like in the other two in the original trilogy, and then in the Ash versus the Evil Dead series, and then kind of after that they became more serious with the 2013 film Rise and the upcoming new one, which I've always liked this movie because these Deadites were like the first serious ones before they became like more joking in a way. And just the Deadites themselves have always been such an interesting villain character, whatever the fuck you want to call them, like a spirit in a way. They've always just been such an interesting like character to me, because it kind of always feels like this demon mixed with a zombie in a way. Like it has like these cool zombie like elements of like the character, being possessed by them, whether it is you just simply get stabbed by one of the Deadites and you kind of slowly become infected in a way, or you just become possessed by whatever it is that possessed you and you just become a Deadite and demon or whatever. The Deadites to me have just always been like such a creepy character. And then throughout the whole movie, and how creepy they are and how annoying they can be, of like one of the, I think her name's Linda, when she's just like sitting there smiling and giggling at Ash and Scotty. I think his name is. She's just sitting there giggling, and then when Cheryl first becomes possessed, that is one of the most terrifying reveals in horror history to me. Like that, I remember when I first watched this movie, that scene literally gave me goosebumps.
Hearts, 8 of spades, 2 spades, jack of diamonds, jack of clubs.
Why have you disturbed our sleep, awakened us from our ancient slumber?
Because I was fucking terrified of Cheryl after a little bit. But even after that, just some of the Deadites are just kind of, they're just creepy in general with their weird lullabies and shit, like, we're gonna get you, and just stuff like that. And it's just fucking creepy and weird. And then how they're actually able to, like, go back to a normal form to like trick the characters, which I've always liked to believe that like the demon can like turn itself off whenever it wants and actually lets the original person kind of like come out for a moment and try and beg for their life and being like, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me. I've always liked to imagine it's like that, but obviously there's also moments where you can tell the demon's just talking in like their normal voice trying to convince them, which doesn't even sound convincing half the time. But since it's their voice, their regular voice, it tricks the characters. But the Deadites have always just been such a creepy villain character, whatever the fuck you want to like I guess demons. There have always been these creepy demons that I've always liked, even when I was a kid. So, and to kind of see what they become in the future, where they kind of lose the white eyes. I don't like how they made them lose the white eyes. I feel like that adds to it more. But I guess for the safety of the cast, because they can't see fucking shit when they have them in. But whatever. What do I know? But Deadites to me are just one of the coolest horror movie characters, and just one of those villains to where you just will never forget the first time you saw them. I for sure don't. And this is what this franchise has always been known for, and is for damn good reason. The practical effects in this movie are fucking amazing. Now, I will admit, in the other movies, I do feel like it's used better, because in this movie, it's kind of played to it's kind of overextended in a way, I guess I could say. I don't know how else to say it, but I feel like it's overused, because after a while it just becomes too campy and kind of played for laughs after a while, because this is like a full-on horror movie. Like, this is an actual horror film compared to the other movies. But I feel like the amount of like gore and blood splatter there is in this movie, I feel like it can go overextend in a way. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because they're fucking awesome, but after a while, I'm like, I feel like you're overdoing it. Like the scenes where, like, not the Evil Dead, the Deadites, excuse me, like when the book gets thrown into the fire and then they, like, get completely burnt or whatever, and for some weird reason, these demon hands come out of them, which we've never seen after this movie. So that's an example where I'm like, okay, I feel like you're during it, doing it, and then there's like moments where they're like vomiting up like fucking milk or something like that. After a while, it just gets fucking weird, and it goes a little bit overboard. But you know, complaining away, the practical effects in this movie are very very good. To where I this is one of those movies to like movies like this, The Thing, Jurassic Park, and a lot of other great practical effects movies have always made me fall in love with it. The Evil Dead is one of those movies that made me fall in love with practical effects, along with the other two movies I just named. And it's for damn good reason, because the practical effects in this movie are legendary, to where I think from what I saw, and I could be wrong on this, is what I've heard and seen, is that Sam Raimi actually got in a lot of trouble for this, because, like, obviously you're going to. It was the 80s. People were sensitive. People were not ready for this kind of thing, but it was deemed too violent in the UK that he actually had to go to court over it, which I don't really know the full story. I've only heard small bits of it, and I've only read like a couple of things, but I have seen things to where Sam Raimi full on actually had to go to court in the UK just because this movie was deemed too violent in the UK at the time, which that just shows you how violent this movie is and how great the practical effects are. And that just makes me even love it more knowing that, because it's like, okay, someone found it too violent that they had to sue him. And that's fucking hilarious to me. And I keep mentioning it throughout the whole video, but I've always really enjoyed this movie out of like a lot of the Evil Dead movies, because this one is actually true horror. Now, we have a lot of true horror ones in this franchise, with the 2013 one, Rise, and especially the new one coming out, from what I've been hearing and seeing. I've been watching any trailers. I want to go into it blind. I'm excited. And but this franchise has always been known for being like a comedy, because you have movies like Evil Dead 2, which is the most popular, Army of Darkness, which is obviously, the comedy one, and then with Ash versus the Evil Dead, which has a lot of comedy moments in it. So this has always been a franchise that is known for its comedy, but I've always really enjoyed this first movie due to actually being a full-on horror thriller, and actually being a movie that could scare the shit out of you. I can honestly see people watching this and saying that it scared them at the time. I wouldn't blame them. And there's a lot of freaky ass moments in this movie, and it's actually kind of scary. So I've always really enjoyed this movie because it's actually horror, when the other movies have been known for its comedy, especially the whole franchise. And my final positive, I'm a sucker for Cabin in the Woods horror movies. I've always been a fan of them. Whenever there's like a Cabin in the Woods horror film, I always kind of gravitate towards it. And this is probably the ultimate Cabin in the Woods horror movie for me. Now, there's a lot of other good ones, obviously. There's literally a movie called Cabin in the Woods that I really enjoy, and then movies kind of like Cabin Fever, or whatever else is out there. You can even consider Tucker and Dale versus Evil a Cabin in the Woods movie. I would argue it. But I've always just really enjoyed this movie because of its cabin in the woods setting. I'm a sucker for it, and I've always really enjoyed it. But now moving on to my mixed aspects. I praise the practical effects and everything in this movie, and I still stand by it. But I will admit there are some makeup effects that don't really age well, especially like the makeup on the Deadite, because it's kind of weird how they do it. They have like things where they just simply put like random makeup on to where it's just like their regular face, and then oh my god, other times it kind of looks like their face is peeling a little bit and everything, and that's because of this other makeup they slapped on there. And it doesn't really age all that well, especially kind of on their hands. There's like a few shots to where if you really pay attention, you can see that they put this weird makeup stuff on their hand and it can easily come off because it's not even covering the ass end of their hand or whatever, but you can like see it on their like the back of their hand, but it's like peeling off or whatever. And then like it's small little moments like that if you really pay attention, and if you really pay attention, you can see there's a shot in this movie where Ash shoots Cheryl in the face, and there's a blood tube in her cheek, and you can see that's what's spraying out the blood, which is, you know, a thing that's probably due to the low budget, which you can't really complain about that too much, I guess. But that's always been something I've noticed, but it's also part of the practical effects, so I don't judge it. And it was a low budget, so I can't really, rag on it too much, but it is pretty damn noticeable if you pay good attention enough. And moving on to my negatives, my one negative, and if anything, it could be considered a nitpick because, again, this was a low budget, and then this movie more focuses on the Deadites. I've never really thought any of these characters were fun or developed or good necessarily, which people are going to be like, well, what about Ash? Like, obviously, Ash is good in this movie. Compared to the other ones, this isn't Ash. They literally call him Ashley in this movie, which that's always been his real name is Ashley. They just call him Ash for short. But Ash isn't even Ash in this movie at this point. He's just a guy that survives at the end of the movie. Like he doesn't have that badassery, smart ass attitude to him like he does in the other projects. He is just some 20-year-old that's heartbroken that his girlfriend just died and he's trying to find a way out or whatever. Sure, is he a badass in the movie for at times? Maybe, but he doesn't even feel like Ash in this movie. And even kind of outside of him, like the other characters, like his sister Cheryl, his girlfriend, and Scotty's girlfriend or whatever, none of them are noteworthy and none of them are even memorable. And especially Scotty. I never realized how much I fucking hate that guy. This guy was a fucking asshole throughout the whole movie. Like he was literally selfish and just annoying. And even before the Deadites show up, he was kind of an asshole. Like he teased Cheryl the whole fucking time, and it was just annoying. Like for some dumbass reason, he puts a fucking shotgun right in Ash's face, like it's funny. And then like when the Deadites show up, he's just like, "Well, I'm leaving. I don't care what happens to you two. I'm leaving." Or
Back. Look, I'm getting out. I don't care what happens to her. You take care of her. I'm getting the hell out of here right now.
Brother, this guy stinks!
whatever. And then he comes back fucking nearly torn to shreds by the trees, and then he comes back, he's like, "Help me, Ash." I'm like, dude, you just fucking say you didn't care what happened to him. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, Scotty, he's like the main guy that I hate. Like, I don't know if he was written to be that way or if that's just how he was, but I fucking hate Scotty. And I didn't feel bad when he died. That fucker deserved to die. And then the other ones, they're just kind of there. There's some kind of development with Ash and his girlfriend with this stupid magnifying necklace or whatever. But that doesn't really go anywhere, and Cheryl's the first to go, so you don't really learn anything about her other than she likes to draw, I guess. And then when fucking Scotty's girlfriend gets possessed, you kind of forget that ever happened. So the characters, even Ash, they're nothing noteworthy. But all in all, guys, I really enjoy The Evil Dead. It started off one of my favorite horror franchises, and probably and arguably the most consistent horror franchise that there is out there. I really enjoyed this first movie, and a lot of people probably haven't even seen this movie because they've only seen its sequels. And if you are one of them, definitely check this out. This started off one of the best horror franchises and one of the most consistent horror franchises. And it is a pretty damn good promising start to not only the Evil Dead franchise, but to Sam Raimi's career. So what do you guys think about The Evil Dead? Have you seen it? What do you think about it? Do you like this movie? Do you not like this movie? Are you like me and you prefer the sequels? Let me know in the comments below and we shall talk about it. If you like this video, like it. If you love to subscribe and notifications so you will get notified for all my latest videos and for my other Evil Dead reviews coming out here soon. Thank you all so much for watching, and of course, until my next video, I'll see you all next time.